Hello, my name is Jonas. This is the third part in a series called How I Approach Lenses. In this video, I'll be giving my thoughts on choosing one lens for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. In the first part of this series, I talked about sensor size and explained how I can calculate the crop factor of camera and why that's important when choosing lenses. In the second video, I talked about focal length, compression of depth and movement. Be sure to check out those videos as well. So, right now I'm using this 25mm f1.7 Panasonic lens to shoot video with Pocket 4K. I bought it because I need a cheap and fast lens to start using this camera, knowing that later I'd have to upgrade to something more expensive. The main issue I have with this lens is that it can be hard to pull focus with, and depending on how fast you turn the focus ring, it affects how much change is applied. Also, on this camera, this 25mm lens is the full frame equivalent of roughly 50mm, and that's a bit too narrow for me. And another problem I have is that I want to balance this camera on the Movie M5 gimbal, and to do that I need a heavier lens. And to temporarily solve that, I'm using this fisheye lens adapter to make it more front heavy and able to balance on that gimbal. So my intentions with this camera is to use it mainly for documentary and event shooting, and also gimbal and drone use. And regarding focal length, I typically like to shoot in the range of 35 to 50mm in full frame terms. And on the Canon C100 Mark II, which has a super 35mm sensor, I most often shoot with a Sigma 18-35 lens, and most of the time I set it to 28mm as a starting point, which in full frame would be the equivalent of 40mm. On this Pocket 4K camera I would need a roughly 22mm MFT lens to get the same field of view. Also, earlier when I had the Canon XE10 camera, I learned that a image stabilized long range zoom can be quite handy when shooting events and docs. But because I only get to choose one lens right now, that option goes away. And this is because when I'm using the camera on a drone, I can't have an image stabilized lens because the vibrations of the drone translates down into the lens and shows up in the footage, which leaves me with two options. The first option is to buy a Meike or similar Micro Four Thirds cinema lens, and the second option is to get a MFT to EF adapter and fit my Sigma 18-35 lens. So let's discuss those options now. Option number one, a Meike T2.2 16 or 25mm MFT cinema lens. So these lenses are very reasonable priced cinema glass and seems to be popular amongst filmmakers online. The lenses are not super heavy, but probably heavy enough to help balance the Pocket 4K on my Movie M5 gimbal. Also, the lenses are a bit shorter than the Sigma 18-35 and a bit more compact. But they offer no zoom since they are both prime lenses. One thing which is nice with these lenses is that since they are cinema lenses, you can smoothly adjust the iris and also attach focus and iris motors. But I haven't had a need for these features yet, but it's nice to have those options in the future. My main issue with these lenses is in regard to the focal length. 16mm is a bit too wide for me, and 25mm is too narrow if I only get to choose one lens. Of course, I could always get the 60mm and crop the image, but I really think that something in between 16 and 25mm would be awesome. For example, a 20mm lens. And with a 20mm, I could also crop that one to basically act as a 25 if I wanted to. One thing which speaks against this option is that I have no personal experience with using these lenses, and I'm not familiar with their optical characteristics or how they perform. Option number two, Sigma 835 f1.8 with a MFT to EF adapter. So this is the more expensive option, but since I already own the lens, I only have to buy the adapter, which can still be quite expensive. For the same price as one Metabone speed booster, you can basically buy 2 Meike lenses. But I rather zoom than be changing lenses, because it takes too much time. Another option is to get a adapter without a speed booster function, and the focal range would still be quite attractive at roughly 34 to 66 millimeters. And I rarely go wider than 34 millimeter anyways, so I think that will work. The only thing is that Blackmagic just released a 2.6K 120 frames per second feature on the Pocket 4K camera, and in that mode it will crop the image 1.5 to 1.6 times, I believe. So in that case it can be quite nice to have a wider lens, since the crop is so huge. With a Metabone Speed Booster Ultra adapter, you get a focal range of roughly 24 to 47 millimeters, which is also an attractive focal range for me. What I don't like about the Speed Booster is the added glass behind the lens, and I've seen some examples of a tint shift occurring related to changes in aperture. But with that said, this combination of a Metabone Speed Booster and the Sigma 8035 f1.8 lens can create some really fast optics at f1.3 according to Metabone's website. And this is significantly faster than the t2.2 of the Meike lenses. Also, if we'll go with the 60mm Meike lens, there could be a problem where I don't get the amount of bokeh or short depth of field that I sometimes would like. Another thing that speaks for this option is that I really like to work with the Sigma 8035 lens, and I like the characteristics of it and the result it creates. So, what do you think? Which option should I go with? Or do you have any alternative recommendations? I would appreciate those as well. If you have thoughts or questions, please leave a comment below. Also, remember to like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.